and welcome back to the Misty Morrison Podcast. I'm your host, Misty Morrison, and this is episode 40 of Petty Please. This is our first episode for the new year. Happy New Year! I hope 2026 brings all the amazing things you are dreaming of. Before we get into our stories for the day, our usual housekeeping, whether you are new or returning. Here on the Misty Morrison Podcast, we love to judge, we love to give advice, we love to help people look back at situations with that 2020 vision and see how they could have handled the situation more gracefully. Some days, like today on Petty Please, we also just love to read some pettiness or some neighbor stories, anything like that. Entitlement, and be thankful that it's not us. Whether you are listening on podcast, watching on YouTube, watching shorts on YouTube, TikTok, Reels on Instagram or Facebook, please remember to engage with the content to help the channel grow. Rate, review, like, subscribe, share it with a friend if you liked it. Leave a comment with your thoughts on the stories down below. All the things. All right, into our stories for today. Story number 1 is coming to us from r/neighbors from hell. Having bad neighbors sometimes has its benefits. This one is labeled vent/rant. I used to have good neighbors and then they moved and I got blessed with 2 total clown shows of neighbors. Mostly just oblivious, disrespectful stuff once in a while, but total clowns of people. When I had good neighbors, I would sometimes snowblow their driveways for them when we would get hammered with snow. I would cut their grass when they were away. I would spend valuable time entertaining conversations I didn't like to have. Political. Now that I have bad neighbors, I don't use extra gas, wear and tear on my snowblower or lawnmower. I don't freeze/sweat my balls off. I don't have to listen to long, drawn-out political rants or have to engage in conversation when I'm tired or not feeling well. We have had some big snowstorms lately, and I've sat inside drinking my hot chocolate, staring at the snow piling up on their driveway. I hear the cold wind whistling, and then I see them come out with their shovels, freezing and grouchy. I smile to myself and enjoy the evening. Sure, I lose the friendliness, but sometimes bad neighbors can be beneficial because there isn't a chance in hell I'd do anything for those neighbors. Way to look on the bright side. You could be over here just grouching about how awful it is to have bad neighbors, but you're like, life's easier with bad neighbors. Good positive. Good positive. The first comment. It's not a gold box or anything, I just glanced at it. It says, having dead neighbors is even better. I live next to the largest and oldest cemetery in my city. So peaceful. I don't hear fireworks around the 4th. There's no sounds of children playing or yelling. It's not creepy either. The cemetery is also an arboretum, so its miles of graves are basically in a huge botanical garden with ponds. Okay, that does sound nice. That does sound nice. The next comment says, people gardens. I never thought of it that way, but that's kind of brilliant. The next comment says, love this perspective, makes it less sad to visit my better half. Appreciate your fun thought. Yeah, I might start calling them people gardens. My son loves cemeteries. We live next to one. Well, not next to one. It's just up the road from us, and we go for walks. Sometimes he's like, let's go read the gravestones. So we go in the cemetery and we read dates and names. And he's just curious about it and not creeped out. And I'm like, okay, we just randomly visit cemeteries. It's fine though. Everything's fine. Okay, story number 2 is coming to us from r/neighbors from hell. I need some advice on what to do about my asshole neighbor that thinks it's okay to come to my house and yell at me. This one is labeled other. So first, I'll talk about what just happened at 10:30 tonight. I need to preamble with some context. I have a small chihuahua that hates the cold, as short-haired dogs do. He spends 90% of his day under a blanket during the winter and the rest barking at strange noises, deliveries, or people that come to my door. So on to what happened. I was in my house working on a project. My dog heard something and went onto our porch to bark. I came out to see what the deal was. I heard a noise, but as soon as I spoke to my dog to quiet him, it stopped. So I quieted my dog and went inside. I hear the noise clearly this time. Someone is making kissy noises. I just think maybe someone is walking their dog by my house. So I go outside to get my dog to stop barking, and I hear the kissy noises again. And then my neighbor on to the side of our house walks up to the side of my house and starts screaming at me. He screams at me, "Do you know my bedroom is right there?" Then points to a window directly across from my porch. "Your dog barking wakes me up all night." I reply calmly with, "No, I'm sorry, I didn't know that was your bedroom. I will get him to be quiet. I'm so sorry if he's been keeping you up." I want to add here that this was fully dressed and baiting my dog to bark. This man was not happy with what I said. He continued to scream at me, call me names. He called me a whore, a hoe, and a lot of other names. He says that this has been going on for 10 years. I haven't even lived here 10 years. I've lived here for maybe 4 years. At this point, I get pissed. I mean, what the hell does this guy want from me? So I tell him to go F himself and to get off my property or I'm calling the police. Fair. He backs up off my property and says, "What are you going to do?" and continues to scream nonsense at me. I finally call my husband, who tells him to get off our property. He tries to bait my husband into a fight. My husband remains calm and says, "You say this has been going on for so long, but you've never spoken to us about it." The neighbor screams, "Because I'm nice." His mother or some older woman at this point comes out and says, "We shouldn't have to say anything. It's common sense." I say, "No, if you were nice, you'd calmly come talk to us, and then if it continues to happen, I'd say you have every right to be upset. At this point, if you have a problem with us, call the community office or call the police, because I don't want to hear from you." He continues to scream as the older woman drags him off. We went inside and he threw something at our house. I called our community office and told them what happened. This is not the first time he's done this. Another time he came and knocked on my door. When I opened it, he proceeded to scream and yell at me, saying my dogs were pooping in his yard. My dogs use puppy pads. Anytime we go for a walk, we go nowhere near his house, and I always clean up after my dogs. I have poop bags that attach to my leash. When I told him there was no way it was our dogs, that a lot of people here let their dogs out to go potty off leash. We do not. But there are lots of other small dogs it could be. He continued to scream at me until I closed the door. If anyone has any advice on what I should do about this neighbor, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm afraid he's going to do something to hurt my dogs the way he was baiting my dog to bark, so he could start an altercation. Should I call the police to make a report? Yes. I've never dealt with anything like this, and I'm at a loss. Thanks for reading all of this if you did, and thanks in advance for any advice. Call the police. I would have called the police. First of all, I would have been recording the altercation because that was wild, and called the police, not the community office. I don't know what country this is in. I don't know what a community office specifically is. If it's like a city hall, I don't know what that is. But based on his behavior, straight to the police. Update. I've spoken to the front office. Those of you who said he's probably off his meds were right. They told me that he has harassed other neighbors, that he goes off his meds and picks fights with people, that he's possibly dangerous during these times, to call police if it happens again, and they will take steps to remove him from the community. She reassured me that my dogs are not a problem and that she is aware they bark and at deliveries and people on our property, but no more than any other dogs in our community, and that she is aware I've worked hard to train them to stop when they start barking. That this is not about me, just like it wasn't about the other neighbors he's harassed. This is about his mental illness. I also made a police report. They did say he had a record, but nothing recent. To all of those who gave advice, I will be following it. I'm getting cameras, documenting these interactions, and calling the police the moment he speaks to me. I will also call APS, as some people mentioned. Thank you so much for all your help and kind words. To all those who clearly didn't fully read the post and think my dogs are the problem, my dogs have never pooped in his yard, they use puppy pads, my dogs do not bark all the time. They rarely even go outside during the day when it's this cold. They are usually not allowed out at night, especially if I'm not with them. They are inside dogs. Last night I was working on something going in and out and had the door cracked. This man lured my younger dog outside by coming on my property and making kissy noises at him. My dogs do bark when someone is on our property, but they stop as soon as I tell them to. I used to work as a dog trainer and my dogs are well trained. This is not a case of my dogs being nuisances. This is a case of a mentally ill man trying to start a fight because he's off his meds, which he is known to have done many times before to other people. Even if my dogs were barking their heads off all the time, which they absolutely do not, you come and speak to someone civilly. You don't call them a whore and scream at them and threaten them. Precisely. Okay, so she said that people recommended calling APS, and I didn't know what that meant, but I saw the first comment. It says, call Adult Protective Services to report a mentally disturbed individual who's not being adequately supervised. That's a great plan, since he hasn't actually done anything physically violent yet. Adult Protective Services might actually be more helpful to you than the police. But definitely call both every single time he does something crazy. Honestly, if you're outside and he speaks to you, definitely record and report. But if he came to my door, I would not open it. I would not be willingly interacting with him, even before you knew he was off his meds, just because he's clearly not right. I would avoid that. Okay, story number 3 is coming to us from r/petty revenge. Salad bar revenge. Just this morning, I was at a local supermarket and grabbed a fruit bowl for lunch, planning to eat it in my car. It was just pieces of fruit in a plastic container that was a single serving. There were no forks there, so I went to the pay by the weight salad bar to get one from there. As I was reaching to take a fork from the rack, an employee standing at the salad bar asked me what I was doing. I showed him the fruit bowl, but he told me in a very snotty voice that the forks were for salad bar use only. When I explained that I was buying a product from the same store, he said something about not being able to simplify what he said to me so that I would be able to understand it. So I followed the rules. I grabbed a styrofoam salad bar container, put one chickpea in it, and snatched a plastic wrapped fork before he could say anything. He followed me to the cash register, probably thinking I was going to ditch the styrofoam container. When the cashier put it on the scale, nothing registered, and all I had to pay for was the fruit bowl. As I was walking past him, I made eye contact and said, "Have a nice day, sport." I probably would have been meaner and said, "Have the day you deserve." First comment says, nice, but I might have gone straight to non-petty revenge by talking to his manager about him calling customers dumb. That was brilliant. I didn't even think of that. And then OP replied, and this one's a gold box comment, says, I once had an issue with a guy behind the counter at a car rental place. I forget the issue, but the guy was not nice. So I asked for a manager and added, someone who knows what they're doing. When the manager came, the guy told the manager that I told him, the first guy, that he didn't know what he was doing. I replied, nope, that I asked for someone who knows what they're doing, and you went and got someone who does. Got a snort out of the manager, who took care of the issue with a few keystrokes on the PC there. Yeah, I don't know. He was probably having a bad day. I'm going to think positive and just think the guy at the salad bar was having a bad day, either that or management had already got on to people about similar things. But still, yeah, to call you dumb was definitely going too far. Story number 4 is coming to us from r/petty revenge. The abomination hat. Not sure if this counts as revenge exactly, but the recent post about the singing dogs made me think to share my Christmas petty revenge story. This one goes back a few years to one evening when I, male then about 50, was doing the pre-Christmas grocery shopping with my kids. As we went through the supermarket, we passed the aisle where the Christmas decorations were sold, and my children found a hat. It was a bright red Santa hat with a battery-operated mechanism, such that if you pressed a button on the rim, the top of the hat would wiggle back and forth. Lights would flash and it would play jingle bells. My children thought it was wonderful and put it in the shopping cart. I said, no, that hat is an abomination, and put it back on the shelf. Fast forward to Christmas morning. By family tradition, we select one person each year to be Santa. That person puts on a Santa hat and selects the gifts from under the tree one by one and hands them out so we can all share in the fun. This year I was picked to be Santa, and my children insisted on selecting the first gift, which was from them to me. When I opened the box inside, it was the abomination hat. They insisted I wear it while the gifts were being given out. That is how the abomination hat became an essential part of our family. Christmas celebrations. From a little petty revenge on the part of my children on their uncultured father. I was actually very disappointed some years later when one of the cats peed on the hat and it finally broke down. That hat is an abomination. I love it. Yeah. Brilliant on your kids for going back and getting the hat. Because once you said what it did, I was like, that's so funny. That was a good one. Story number 5 is coming to us from r/neighbors from hell. Noisy neighbor tried to take a restraining order out against my husband and I for complaining. This one is labeled, What Would You Do, Vet/Rant. Trouble started in August when my husband and I complained about excessive noise from neighbor to HOA and noise complaint hotline. Background. In August, the neighbor moved his drum kit to his garage and was playing 3 times a day between 10 to 30 minutes with the garage door open. One evening, my husband spoke to the neighbor face to face and asked him to not play late at night, to which the neighbor agreed, but that didn't last long, as a day or two later he was playing again, and multiple times throughout the day. We work from home and he starts at 8 a.m. and doesn't stop until 9 p.m. The complaint was dismissed by both HOA and county. My husband and I said, oh well, and gave up. Well, last week, after things were settled, the neighbor filed a restraining order that was denied, but included a false complaint and written false evidence that my husband is violent towards me. It goes into detail with a false timeline, and he states that my husband is unhinged. Also mentioned in the order that his family is concerned for their safety. We are a very passive couple who do not believe in owning firearms or physical violence against another. The neighbor owns firearms and has decals on his truck of AK-47s. He is also a meathead and a huge buff dude who's constantly yelling and usually under the influence of marijuana. We see and smell the smoking. No hate towards anyone who partakes. In the past couple years of living next to these people, we have let a lot of things slide. Their dog has damaged our fence and entered our yard, and they have driven their vehicle in our front yard, creating ruts. We've reached out to the owners of the home that they rent and have never gotten a response back. Our neighbor across from these people have seen the husband holding a firearm in his truck. We genuinely fear our safety as a result of the neighbor's false claims. We are documenting everything but feel helpless, especially since the noisy neighbors complained on a social media post and 2 HOA board members told them to continue the noise. Edit, I just want to thank everyone who has responded. You all rule. So this is kind of weird because I feel like HOAs normally take noise complaints incredibly seriously. Me, myself, I don't think that the drumming, yes, he could close the door and dampen the noise. That would be nice. But I don't think that from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. is wild hours at all. I don't live close to people. I have not lived close to people for a very, very long time. So I really can't say what it's like at this point. I know when I was a kid and I lived in an apartment building, I couldn't even, we had a little basketball net inside. Couldn't play basketball except in the middle of the day because it would be loud, bouncing it on the floor. So it was middle of the day, mid-afternoon, we had to stop playing. It had a piano, had to have the volume turned way down low, and had to play middle of the day to not bother neighbors. And as a kid, I thought that was really annoying. That's probably why I love living where I do. I live far from anyone. We do whatever we want. Play all day. Any kind of noise. We don't make a lot of noise. But my kid is not restricted to, you can only do loud activities or even moderately loud activities during these certain hours so we don't bother people. No. You do what you want on your property. As far as him holding a firearm in his truck, it's his truck. He can. It sounds like you live in America, so it's his truck. He can do what he wants. If you feel that unsafe, yes, what he did, filing the restraining order with all the falsified evidence, horrible. He probably is a little bit unhinged. But if you feel that unsafe, move. If you can, move. If not, just avoid him. You can't tell him what to do in his own home, and apparently the HOA is not willing to either. let's see. I think, was that 4 or 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that was 5. Story number 6 is coming to us from r/neighbors from hell. Strange situation and I need to cope. This one is labeled Apartments NFH. I just want to share what's going on right now because there is no one I can properly talk to about it. Since everyone, and sometimes even I, assumes that I am delusional about what's going on. Could be true for some instances, but at this point, there are just so many things I cannot explain any other way that my downstairs neighbor is sort of gaslighting/bullying me. I just want to say beforehand that I really don't want responses suggesting I should retaliate or anything like that, because I find myself to be easily pushed by that, and it's already bad enough as it is. I already had seen a psychiatrist about this, by the way, and that didn't really do anything substantial to improve my situation. So I believe my downstairs neighbor has one of those ceiling thumpers. I am sure some people on this subreddit are familiar with and also own one. I don't know what this is yet. Well, this thing gets set up under my bed every night, basically, and it's effed up. There is nothing that can be done about it because it blends in with the general noise the radiators in my apartment complex make. Recording doesn't work, and I cannot file a complaint because my father, who is half deaf, owns the place and calls me crazy. Talking directly to said neighbor is also impossible because the situation is denied flat out and is followed with more bullying. All of this happening for nights upon nights might have actually turned me a bit nuts. My NFH's apartment is actually empty. If you look inside, because it's for sale, it was rented. Yet sounds are still produced from there. It could be easily explained that it's coming from above and I perceive it as coming from below, but the constant interval tapping is starting to make my upstairs neighbor react as if I produce the sounds. But they are coming from below my bed. So WTF is going on? Now my upstairs neighbors are behaving as if I do all those things. If only they knew how bad it really is living right above the actual source. I am just so sad about the negativity I get from below, and now as a fun bonus from above. Last week I stomped the floor with a big thump, which made my dad mad. It was probably audible for the entire block. It came straight from my reptilian brain, but I cut myself some slack because I'm literally unable to do anything about it. Last night I went outside and downstairs, so see a seemingly empty apartment. After coming back to lay on my bed, the noises had suddenly stopped, and it's as quiet as never before until it resumes. So yeah, to attempt to bring together my perhaps unstructured story, it all comes down to epic gaslighting and or my sanity dropping. I hope the house below sells soon and I may find a way to cope better. Also, no hate to people who use ceiling thumpers. I don't know what a ceiling thumper is. Okay, so it's what it sounds like. A ceiling thumper is a device, often remote controlled, used to create knocking or vibrating noises against the ceiling as a form of retaliation against noisy upstairs neighbors. Okay, that's wild. What does NFH mean? Neighbors from hell. Okay, that makes sense. Honestly, from all that, I can't tell. I mean, if your upstairs neighbors hear it too, it's probably real. But also with the apartment downstairs being vacant, this is weird. And I kind of do worry about your sanity. I don't know what to make of this one. This one's weird. But that is 6 stories for this week's episode of Petty Please. Thank you so much for being here for our first episode of 2026. And I will see you next time for another episode of the Misty Morrison Podcast. Bye.